we're here at the Jemez Mountains, location scouting for Chaisson Quest for Oriud, and this is a location.
Looks nice, cool overhanging rocks. We like it,
Green moss.
and we're looking forward to what's gonna happen.
The world of Chaisson really developed from a simple picture. When I was 9 or 10 years old, I drew this picture of this dragon, and I thought it was so cool that this dragon had to have a story that he was a part of. So that's when I decided to create this fantastical world that I came to call Chaisson.
Since our teen years, Brian and I have been working together to flesh out the Chaisson universe, developing the cultures, the creatures, the mythology, the theology, basically just fleshing out this fantasy realm and giving it substance. When I went to Biola University, I decided that it was time to stop talking about making a Chaisson film and actually sit down and make a Chaisson film. So I spent my 3 years at Biola University creating the first Chaisson movie, a half-hour claymation fantasy epic called Chaisson Rise of the Zerid.
Going to Biola University, I knew I wanted to make a live-action Chaisson film, but I really wasn't sure what I could do. And the summer before I went to Biola, my family and I drove up into the Jemez Mountains for the first time. And as we're driving and the trees are going past the car, and I'm listening to the soundtrack from Blood Diamond. And as that music's just going through my head, and I'm just seeing these rocks and ridges and canyons, and just picturing people on an epic quest walking along these ridges, this story just started to formulate in my mind.
My two friends, Karen Mush and David Hoffman, had helped me write my own screenplay for Chaisson Rise of the Zerid. And so when Brian decided that he wanted to do a Chaisson film, it seemed the smart thing to do to bring those two writers on board also, since they were already familiar with this fantasy universe.
It's a lot of fun to write a story that's not necessarily mine. It's a different kind of challenge because instead of coming up with the world by myself, I get to discover his world and then tell a good story inside of it.
We pretty much just initially set out with a very, very basic storyline. We knew what we wanted to happen at the beginning and we knew it at the end.
After sitting around talking about it for a few nights, David went off and he wrote the first draft. He brought it back and I'm like, cool, needs more action. And so I took the draft and I rewrote it.
I tried to make everything part of the script as a whole. Every small plot detail sort of works with the rest of the screenplay. And Brian doesn't really do that in that way. I remember I'd read one of his drafts of the script and I'd ask him why he put something in, and he'd say, because I thought it looked cool. And then I'm pretty sure my head exploded.
We'd give it to Karen. She'd work on the characterization, Hoffman would work on the story, and then I would work on just making those two things really match my vision and direction for the film. Alright, and action.
To say that this project was ambitious is quite an understatement. Karen, Brian, and I knew we were biting off more than we could chew, but we chewed really hard.
Gee, the biggest challenges in pre-production. Well, the script was easy. That might have been it. I was in charge of helping put a crew together, raising money, shopping for fabric. I did casting. Yeah, lots of stuff.
Lauren, we can't just wait here. You're still wounded.
The forest heals me.
Only to make you die more slowly.
Aaron Guyvett was someone I had worked with in the past, and we had really connected and worked well together. In writing the script, I told David Hoffman, think of Arana as Aaron Guyvett.
I grew up as a little girl wanting to be a warrior princess, and so when I got the role, I was extremely excited. It was everything and more than I hoped for.
One of the reasons we just loved Erin was she wasn't afraid to scream. Like, her scream echoed through the building, and it was awesome.
They were all pretty horrified after that, in a good way.
Finding Archer was really hard.
Karen and I, we rented a space out in LA specifically for casting Archer, and we drove out there and spent the whole day out there.
We were reading people through, and there were lots of good options, and then Garrett Marchbank comes in.
Well, I've always wanted to play a fantasy character, swung swords and things like that. And they gave me the sides, and I read for it. I finished, and I look, and he's sitting on the other side of the table. Nice. Nice.
Brian and I looked at each other, and we just knew right then that this guy was Archer.
I'm not gonna stand by while you follow him with such blind loyalty, Irana. I really connected with his bitterness. Tell you the truth, that's what I really connected with, because Archer starts out as a very, very bitter character. He was a really fun character to play.
It ended up being kind of hard to find crew members because a lot of people heard, oh, a 30-minute action fantasy film that you're shooting in New Mexico? Yeah, good luck with that.
The one role that we had the hardest time finding was a director of photography. And so one day, someone just randomly suggested, hey, why doesn't Kevin be the DP? He's got a good eye. He knows what looks good on camera. But I was like, nah, I've done claymation stuff before. I haven't done live action DP work. But the choice was made, and I was given the role of director of photography. I knew I needed some help with the DP work, so I went to my good friend Brandon Hahn, who is an expert with all things camera, all things lighting. He has just such innate raw skill to be able to take a good image and make it a great image, just with a couple lights, maybe a little bit of fog from a fog machine to create some nice light rays.
Brandon is a lighting genius. He just knew instinctively how to make everything look beautiful, just like a painting almost.
Screen right.
Watch your, there's a big rock behind you.
Camera.
Let me see the frame.
Do you remember the storyboard I did this one, Brian?
Yeah.
One of my key jobs as the director of photography was to pre-visualize the movie, and Brian and I would go over the shot lists, just talking through basically every image that was needed to make the film come to life.
Arana's code, I think, is what I was working on, and I modified the pattern. The one you sent me, I'd made something with it before. My history with wardrobe has primarily been with period pieces that have to be historically accurate, with a lot of details that are determined by actual history. Costuming for fantasy allows me to take all of that, what I've learned from the different time periods, and blend them together into a new, more exciting whole.
I look hot.
Oh, you do.
I'm pretty sure you have a spicy rating on ratemyprofessor.org.
We had Chelsea Nygaard as the designer, and she provided the drawings that we used as inspiration, as well as the color palettes that we drew from. With Arana's coat, having the combination of the very sharp, pointed corners at the bottom of her jacket, along with the tassels, creates this mixture of both elegance and rugged warrior princess.
When I first saw my costume, I was like, really? I get to do this? This is just like, it was almost a little cherry on the top of the whole package of getting the role. That was something that was really cool in all the different departments, whether it be costume or set design. They all just really confirmed how I had established Arana's character.
Colossus, 2 feet spread. We have tents, and we have people in costume, and we've got, I don't know, I'm trying to be enthusiastic, I don't know what else to say.
One of the first people who I brought on board was Rachel Beck. I just knew she needed to be involved because she had such an extensive history just in reading and writing of fantasy.
I emailed Karen and said, hey, can I be involved in some way? She said, sure, just come to our meeting. And I walked out of there as a production designer. And I didn't actually know what that was. But it's apparently a person who designs sets, so that's what I did. I built sets.
Well, I told her, well, we're gonna do a tent because these guys are like Bedouins, and she's like, oh, like this. And I'm like, actually, that was a lot better than I could have come up with, but yes, that's where I was going.
We really looked a lot at Romanian gypsies, Hungarian gypsies, just trying to grab a lot of that Eastern European feel. And then we mixed that with a Celtic vibe as well.
Action.
Irana's room was a lot of fun because it was all drapey and princessy, but with a little bit of a tomboyish edge.
It was incredible. Like, I walked in and I was like, oh my gosh, this looks like my own bedroom.
The living spaces that these characters lived in really kind of contributed to what the character was like, and you could look at Arana's tint and see, okay, this is what she's like.
We're afraid of him.
Oh, there he goes. Okay.
Okay, Aaron. No. How about we electrify the bottom?
Yeah. All right, guys.
Okay,
guys,
roll it.
Guys, everyone.
Go for it.
We wanted to make Arker's tent completely functional, making it actually like, no, well, where would they do these things? Where would they hang their washing? Where would they keep their tools? All these sorts of things that really filled out the set.
We all stayed up very many nights, just all night, chugging coffee, safety pinning fabric together, and just trying to make this thing look real.
I'm counting the number of ways in which I can go home and kill myself right now. Right now I'm up to 17.
My first thoughts when I came on set with Arker's tent was, wow, they have a really good set designer. I'm gonna have to give a really good performance because this already looks really fantastic. There's so much little detail on all of these things, it's not hard to really dive into the world.
Zach and I have got it. Go ahead and stab right here.
All right, I'm going. Oh, that's so easy.
Okay, so we just have to hold.
The weapons were donated from a place called Dark Sword Armory up in Canada, and they actually just gave us close to $2,000 worth of swords, which was amazing. They do everything hand forged, and so Brian went through and picked out a bunch of swords that he wanted, and they just shipped them to us along with foam sword replicas for the battle scenes.
Those weapons really helped the film. So, Dark Sword Armory, El Azared, thanks guys, you rock.
Exactly, right? No, the journalism students are awesome. Okay, so.
Siak was somebody who I wasn't sold on at the beginning.
One of the first things I said to Brian was, okay, Brian, we can go forward with this idea, but he'd better not end up looking like a Power Rangers villain.
I wasn't sure if we could really pull it off. And so Brian and I talked about it for a long time. We hashed this out, and he went and got Bones and said, just let me build it, and I promise it'll work.
All right, so what's going on here?
I am giving Siak a manicure currently. It requires a drill.
Rooming with Brian was quite the adventure. You never knew what was going to happen. Some nights he would just bring in a box full of bones, and he just asks me, hey, do you want to be in the monster costume? They needed someone who was a little bit shorter.
Skylar's short, so we can put this thing on top of his head and he won't be too freakishly tall.
So I just said, all right, Brian, whatever.
So I went out, I bought some bones from the bone clones, several different animals all thrown together with a human skeleton. I got my old bike helmet and, using a hammer and a saw, chiseled a little nesting spot for the skull to just sit in so it could be mounted on top of Skylar's head. And I started just, throwing all these different random materials together onto Skylar's body, sewing them, drilling them, gluing them. When it actually came time to start doing tests with the costume, that's when things started getting difficult.
I had no idea what I was getting myself into. The whole thing kind of felt like my own personal hell that I got to wear. It all just comes onto me, and my back is being stabbed with the spines. There's about 30 pounds resting just on the top of my head. It's very hot, and I'm completely immobilized.
Ow, it pinches, it hurts, I can't take this isn't gonna work. And then me finally saying, sorry Skylar, you signed up for this and we don't have time to fix it.
He was just a trooper. Like, he was on platform flip-flops, so we had to duct tape to his feet. And at one point I think he lost maybe permanently circulation in one of his toes.
The one thing that really kept me alive on this set was Mountain Dew.
Skylar drinks so much Mountain Dew.
I had my own case of Mountain Dew ready anytime I needed it. That was really the blood that kept Siak going.
This is my life force right here. I can breathe.
And Skylar's back!
At the end of the shoot, I did feel kind of bad for Skylar because of all the pain he endured. But at the same time, he's one of the coolest parts of the movie, and people remembering how cool he is going to last far longer than his pain did.
And look up
Cut this way, Skyler. And cut.
That's a cut.
So how'd this weekend go, Zach?
Like 30 seconds. I hit my head. I fell off the cart.
These out of the tent.
I actually just whipped a cord into my stomach. I think I electrocuted myself once and burned myself several times. But
other work is worth hundreds.
you know, actually thinking about it, that's kind of normal. So I guess it went pretty well.
The film was basically divided into 3 shoots. First, we shot for 3 days in the soundstage at Biola, where we did all the interiors and the tent scenes. The next weekend, we drove out to Afton Canyon and shot all the desert stuff there. And then had finals, had graduation, jumped in a car, drove 13 hours to New Mexico for an 8-day camping shoot up in the mountains.
The Jemez Mountains was the perfect place to shoot this film. In fact, a lot of the film was designed to be shot at this location. It was breathtaking scenery, so isolated and so far away from the rest of humanity. It just felt so untouched and pristine.
Run 3, take 4, marker.
All right, and action.
The Oriud crew is awesome. We are the crew of awesome. This is what we called ourselves because it was true.
When I met everyone, there was almost an immediate connection because I looked at them and they looked at me, and we both knew that we were nerds.
Take 2, marker.
One of the best things about this crew was everyone's willingness to pitch in and do whatever needed to be done. Be that, oh, someone needs to do the dishes. Well, I guess it's the DP's turn this time. All right, DP, you do the dishes.
People worked so very hard. They were hauling lights through tons and tons of forest and down super steep hills and dragging generators. Oh my goodness, JD and Mitch were just beasts with the generator.
We had a dolly, but because of the terrain, we couldn't roll the dolly, we had to carry the dolly. So, you know, it led to sort of a weird feeling of having to carry something that had wheels.
Okay, Kevin.
There was one location in particular that was almost a mile from the road, and we shot there 3 consecutive days. So 3 consecutive days we had to carry all the equipment down and all the equipment back.
Mr. Director, how do you feel?
I feel pumped.
Okay. David, here's for your turn.
Oh, that's a shame.
Shooting in such remote areas was interesting. There are just no cell phones. The hardest part was actually trying to help people know where to go to the bathroom. We had lots of people who had never camped or really roughed it before, and going behind a rock just wasn't flying. So at one point we tried to make a bathroom out of C-stands and fabric, and that just fell on someone.
Probably the most challenging thing I did was I had to carry someone on my back up that steep hill up to that fountain. The water from that hot spring was flowing out, and the entire ground was wet and slippery. And I'm going up and I'm thinking, man, if I slip and roll, this is gonna be bad. And it's gonna be probably even worse for the person on my back.
And there were times during the shoot where I thought to myself, I must have been a masochist when I signed up for this.
Oh. Wait, we're all the way there? Okay. Yeah.
I was exhausted one day we were shooting, and I jumped up on a log, and then I was supposed to jump off of it. But instead, I jumped up on the log, slipped, and ate it. And everyone was kind of quiet, and then once they figured out I was laughing, they were like, okay, we can crack up too.
2 bears, please.
Hi!
Ooh. That was a bat.
I saw a bat.
Brunch boy.
Shady. I love that part in Rip Talks. One of the hardest things in shooting the film, and also one of the most comedic things, was that I was blindfolded for a good portion of our shooting, and everyone having to learn how to work with that. Brian had to figure out how to give me direction when I couldn't see where he was pointing to. When he's like, "This is your eye line," I'm like, "What is my eye line?" Oriud! Archer! I would say the most challenging scene to act through for this film was the scene where Rana's on the cliff face. She just gets to the place where she's completely hopeless and helpless. And it's at that cliff face where I feel like she meets true strength, and it's in her humility and her ability to believe in magic at her weakest point that she is able to have the strength she needs to actually be that leader she was always trying to be.
Him down, you turn and shoot and say twang. One way that I found that was really helpful to just connect and communicate with my actors was relating things that happened in the film to things that they had experienced. You know, things like being grounded by your parents, or, you know, saying goodbye to someone for the last time, or, you know, parts where Archer just, you know, said something demeaning to Balri, and I would tell Garrett, that's a slap in the face. That's what you're doing right there.
Working with Brian was really wonderful. He loved on his actors, and he tried to really respect them and let them be a part of the creative process of bringing these characters to life.
Archer's kind of like a tank, dude. He just powers through stuff.
Garrett was so gung-ho, his shoes got ruined on the first day of shooting.
My boots have no tread. One of them actually fell apart and we duct taped. Hopefully you won't notice it too much.
He didn't complain. He was like, it's all right, just put my shoes on me. We're gonna go. I'm gonna fight these guys in these awful shoes.
Fight scenes are always my favorite part of making a film. I basically go out into the backyard with my little brothers and think, what are some cool moves? How can we connect them in a natural way, and how can we make it look like they're trying to kill each other?
Brian is a fantastic fight scene choreographer because there was just a nice flow to everything.
When it came to our all-night shoot, and it's near the end of the week, and we're all already exhausted, and we get to, you know, the fight between Archer and the two Sons of the Eclipse, and everyone turned to me and said, okay, it's the fight scene, it's your moment. They handed me the camera, and they said, let's do it.
We got up there and we were going through our motions, but you still miss certain cues and people forget, and so we would just be going up there and I would just crack one of them in the head or barrel roll one of them over, and just, I mean, these guys, they were getting beat up pretty rough. They were getting thrown and slammed into the bushes, and they got up and they never complained once. It was fantastic. They were some real troopers, but I let them have it pretty hard, dude. Like, accidentally, you know?
And I'm watching the screen, seeing, you know, glimpses of frames saying, I want that, that moment is awesome. And it was just building and building, and it was exciting, and it was awesome.
Darn. Missy. You got the block, baby. You got the block.
All right.
Shot in the middle of the night, just powering through it. It was great.
There you are with your minion there, I see.
So there was this one time where I'm in the Siek costume, and I'm sitting there on the ground, and Erin Guyvet's character, she has a loaded bow, and at this time she's blindfolded, and she's pointing it straight at me.
Brian's like, Siek, stay there. Look at Erin. And Brian says, okay, now draw the bow and point it over towards Siek, and then let it go.
A live arrow is pointed straight at my head that's being held by a blindfolded girl.
I remember Skylar looking over at me and what's gonna happen? Like, just totally like, this is not cool. And she let the arrow go and it missed him, but I remember thinking like, oh, that poor guy.
Brian, could you give me assistance? Sure. Just hold the ball.
Camping really brought a sense of camaraderie to the film. We ate together, we slept together, we played together, we didn't bathe together.
Right, no showers or super nice, up-to-date restrooms within 50 miles is enough to deter a lot of people, but not this crew.
Everyone really came together and just, you know, formed a community and formed a family as we just all worked on this story that we believed in.
Even through all the pain and all the suffering that I went through there, it was really worth it in the end, and I wouldn't have traded the experience for anything.
Last day of shooting, when we got up early before the sun had risen, we drove up to do the last shot of Archer and Arana and Ballerine at the pool, and we were getting ready to shoot the last shot, and we finished it. I turned to Kevin and Brandon and asked them, did it look good? And then they said, wait, looked down, they're like, yep, it's good. And I jumped up on a rock and shouted, that's a wrap. And then Mitch slapped me with his clipboard because he's the first AD. That's his job, and he had been waiting all shoot to shout, "That's a wrap," and I just stole his moment. But then, because there was only a few of us up on the mountain, when we got back to camp, Mitch was the one who was able to announce it to the crew.
Just so you guys know, that is a wrap on Chaisson Quest for Oriud!
It was one of those things where you come off it and you say never again, and then a week later you're saying, hey, we should totally do that thing again.
After the long drive back from New Mexico, we get back and say, okay, time to sit for a very long time and click buttons until we have a movie.
With post-production, it's a matter of everything's shot, everything's in the can, now just put it together.
Kevin would just come in and say, here, look at what I've edited. And I'm like, maybe change this either. Okay, goes running, sits down, sits there for an hour and a half till it's fixed, comes back, says, what do you think? I'm like, that's good, but can you? Okay. And then when it came to the fight scenes, Kevin kept coming to me and saying, here, what do you think? And I'm like, it's good, but it's not what I wanted. And he would make changes and try to make it what I wanted, and I just said, Kevin, can I edit it? And he says, okay. So I sat down and just edited it all together, and I was really excited, and I showed people, and they liked it, and Kevin said, okay, it needs some tweaking.
After finishing up the edit, I had yet another role just kind of dropped into my lap.
Kevin.
Hey, brother.
So what are you up to?
I am color grading.
What sort of grades are you getting? Is it gonna pass?
It needs some tutoring. With color grading, one of the chief things you're trying to do is give intentionality to every image by bringing up the greens maybe, or bringing down the reds, and thematically just focusing on the colors in the scene. Also by highlighting specific areas and brightening them or darkening them in order to emphasize them or de-emphasize them. It's taking the raw image and the world as we see it and just pushing it and manipulating it in a subtle manner that pushes it from reality to art. I am working on the desert scene, and the footage looks pretty good, but it's too pretty and too alive. So the first thing I did was I went in here and I took out a lot of the green color, basically just selected this green and said go. So I went through and I just sucked out all the green there. And then the second thing I needed to do was get rid of the sky, make that much more of a gray, unpleasant, ominous sort of color. But the big thing here is just that across the board, the image is just very consistent as far as brightness and contrast and so on further, but I want the eyes to focus right here. So I create this mask where they are now the brightest part of the screen, and as we go out it's darker. It's subtle enough that hopefully no one will be able to tell that I'm manipulating the image, but now you look at it and your eyes go right here in the center.
It feels like a moving painting, and I love that. It just really enriches the whole story when the visual is that rich.
While Kevin was busy with color correction, I got to work with Ben on the audio. I basically just took the whole movie and just highlighted all the movements. I spent one day in the basement just punching cantaloupes, punching lettuce, punching myself.
I love sound design because of the creative aspect, and particularly supporting the story, such as the magic or CX voice.
He has been close to you for a very long time.
And this is where Siek shall finish coming to life.
Yes, the Minoran.
One of the biggest surprises of this film was just ending up with a big name actor playing the voice of our villain. Doug Jones is famous for playing creatures in such movies as Pan's Labyrinth or Hellboy. We met on an independent film shoot. We were both the only redheads on set. There was a sort of ginger connection.
Isn't he precious? Isn't he precious? Look at that face.
I asked him if he wanted to play the voice of the villain, and to my surprise, he very excitedly said yes.
Hunt me now. Nice. I'm sorry. That made me chuckle.
Doug Jones' performances were layered together. Then what I did is I created this kind of low tone to Sieg as he was talking that gave him that telepathy sort of presence on the screen.
And after a little bit of tweaking with the editing and echoey and Sieg got creepy.
Hunt me now.
The sounds for the life sucking started with vocalizations from Doug Jones. We took those and we stretched them out and really manipulated to create this really long, drawn-out scream. From there we added some animal effects like pig squeals, as well as some baby vocalizations. When you take a baby scream and you draw it out, it's a horrifying kind of sound, especially when you use it subtly.
Yeah, and we saw how you deal with babies in Pan's Labyrinth, so.
Just eat them.
Yeah.
If they're causing you some trouble, just eat them.
It's like, sorry, but.
This won't end up on the bonus features, right?
No.
Okay, good. So we all go to jail.
After all of the sound editing and the sound design and the Foley and the dialogue, we moved to the music recording.
I feel that music infiltrates a listener's entire being, and in that sense, music in movies is so powerful and so necessary, and directors and composers being on the same page about that is foundational.
The inspiration for the music really came from one of the biggest inspirations for the movie, and that's the Blood Diamond soundtrack. I would have Hannah listen to it, and so she could pick up on both the sound that the music had conveying their physical journey, but also their emotional and spiritual journey.
Being a student composer, you kind of have to do everything. So being the synth programmer, being the composer, being the orchestrator, you're required to know all of these skills. I'm using Digital Performer. It has all these samples that I can use of live instruments to help the score sound real. And like we have a multi-million-dollar budget, which is always nice. The magic theme is a really elemental portion of the film. It's characterized by strings and choirs, and they're doing a sort of arpeggiated motion. Well, in this scene, this is the pivotal magic scene. So I'm going to use a lot of the boys' choir because it gives that ethereal, euphoric sense. And then I'm also going to use some strings, some string flurries. And then I also use at the end, it's more militant and triumphant, and so I'm going to use some cellos there, playing really abruptly, and it gives it that energetic, let's go get the bad guy effect.
A good deal of the music Hannah did through synth programming, but then for some of the parts that Hannah just really wanted to highlight one instrument, we'd bring in real musicians and have them playing in the sound studio and record them each individually.
Cool, yeah. I think I felt good about that.
That music gets brought into the final mix, which is the mix of the dialogue, the sound design, all those other elements that we had edited previously.
The last few nights building up to the premiere, we'd be in the studio for 10, 12, 14 hours straight, just messing with the levels and making the sound just really come alive.
The beautiful thing that's happened in the past 15 years is that anything is possible as far as what you can imagine, you can make it happen now. So for a budget of 0 and a turnaround of 5 weeks, you kind of have to take your imagination and fit it into those parameters. So Kevin went through and did a lot of the grunt work and trying to figure out how to get all those done in time. And he did it really fast. I still don't know how that was possible, but having to pace yourself to do that for that many weeks, you just kind of go, okay, this is my life. This is what it's going to be. I will see my family, in June, and I'll miss them for now, but that's okay.
I'd go to him and say, okay, this is what I'm thinking. These leaves come swirling together and swirl up into this creature. And Rick sits here like this and goes, okay.
He would explain it to me, then I would go off by myself for 12 hours, do something, come back and see if it was at all what he was thinking. And usually it was close. There were two kinds of effects in the film. There are the effects that are pure magic, that there is no real world reference to. And then there are other things where you don't necessarily know they're an effect. People need to look at this and not know that the mountain behind those trees there's no mountain. When Irana's up on the cliff, you don't want to kill an actress and having her in a precarious situation. So that shot had to be kind of just created in post-production. She's actually standing on a wonderful little grass meadow area. So Kevin had to go in frame by frame and cut around Irana's shoulder and then around the edge of the cliff where that is and then around the feet. It's really gratifying when the effect goes by and people didn't go, ooh, that was really good. They just go, oh, that's kind of scary. She's on a cliff. You go, yes, okay, it worked. The first time that Balrian uses his magic against CX, that shot's got a bunch of different elements that all come together. So we would start by motion tracking the staff that Balrian had. Then we have to motion track the camera move, basically. So when you've got all these elements tracked to that, then I'll start to layer in some of the magic effects. There's got to be 4 or 5 different layers of just magic and then dust and all these other force field kinds of effects that happen there. So all those are kind of layered together until they look just right.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Being able to serve the story with those kinds of visual effects is really gratifying. It's not just a window dressing for the story, it's a part of the storytelling. I remember the day that we turned in the last shot, it was like, I forgot what it was like to just breathe. Oh, this feels neat.
At the end of the day, taking the main edit and layering in the visual effects, putting in the sound, the music, everything just came together really well, and just everything felt right.
It's a really great feeling to know that you had a quest and you achieved it. We had an idea, we had themes, we had characters, we had a story. And now we have a movie that contains all of those.
Watching the audience respond to your film is probably one of the most rewarding parts of making a film. And it was just a really amazing feeling to know that this came from the creative input of all these different people all coming together because they believe in making this story happen.
It's just a blast because all these people are brought together for the love of fantasy, just the genre of it.
We were super ambitious and I wasn't always necessarily sure if it was going to work, but I believed in it and I trusted it, I believed in Brian, and it really turned into something awesome.
Part of why I love fantasy as a genre, I think that myths and legends, that their purpose is to put our reality in a different context so that we can actually see our reality for what it is.
By watching Irana's quest up Mount Oriud, even though the audience themselves have never gone on an epic adventure, their lives have been a quest. And by seeing their lives symbolized in this one person's struggle, helps remind them what really matters and what they're really fighting for.
It's about a banished general discovering what faith is, and about a girl who's just really blind to what's going on in the world and just her making her faith real.
It was just learning to believe in something bigger than yourself. That was something really powerful to me because it's really it directly transfers straight over to everyday life. You know what I mean? There's some things that are just bigger than you, and you either believe in them or you don't.
I want it to be something that can be shared, a story to be told over and over again, and then I want to tell the next story, and the one after that, and the one after that.
The Ulrichs are so talented when it comes to just this genre, and they're so committed, and they got so much love for the old Chaisson world, and there's so much detail in everything.
Brian and Kevin have a lot of really cool ideas for more stories that can take place in the Chaisson universe. And if we can possibly get those made, it would be a dream come true.